A very good evening to all. Thank you for joining us today for a virtual salute to our IAF officers. A warm greetings to our air warriors and their families on Air Force Day. India observes Indian Air Force Day every year on October 8th. But why October 8th? The Air Force in India was officially raised as the supporting force of the Royal Air Force of the United Kingdom on this day in 1932. And I proudly say that the IAF has come a long way since then. The Indian Air Force is the air arm and a crucial organ of the armed forces which play a vital role in the wars fought by the country. Its primary mission is to secure Indian airspace and conduct aerial activities during armed conflicts within the nation. Interestingly, the Indian Air Force not only safeguards Indian territory and national interest from all the threats but also provides support during natural calamities. Hence, this is the day we celebrate to honor and recognize the selfless efforts of our Jawans and the entire force. The motto of the Air Force is taken from the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Nabhas Parisham Deeptam, which literally means the brilliance that rose from the skies. Touch the sky with glory. Every year, the Indian Air Force Day is celebrated at Hindon Air Force Station located in the Ghaziabad, Uttar Pradesh. By the way, a fun fact: Hindon Air Force Station is the largest air base in the entire Asia. It's also the eighth largest in the world. The celebrations on the Indian Air Force Day are marked every year with a unique theme. Last year, the theme was the untiring efforts and the supreme sacrifices of its personnel. Meanwhile, in 2019, the nation witnessed the theme of Know Your Air Force. This year, Indian Air Force Day Parade paid tribute to all the unsung heroes of the 1971 Indo-Pakistani War. I'm glad that you have joined us today in this virtual event, and I welcome you all to the interviews.
जिद है मेरी दर्द चीर के निकल चुका मौका मिले तो करूं मैं ये दोबारा जुनू की आग में उबलती मेरी कोशिशों को चाहिए ना कोई और सहारा
चक्का जित्ते ते मिलन बधाइयां चक्का जित्तिया चक्का जित्ते ते मिलन बधाइयां चक्का जित्तिया जित्ते ते मिलन बधाइयां के आया है फतेह करके सूरमा सूरमा के माने है जम्मिया एक सूरमा सूरमा.
A very good evening to one and all present. Among us, we have former Air Vice Marshal Kapil Kak. He has served in the Indian Air Force in the flying branch for over 3 decades and partook in the Indo-Pakistani War of 1971, wherein he undertook bombing missions in both the western and the eastern sectors. For his distinguished service of exceptional order, the President of India awarded him with the Ati Vishit Seva Medal and the Vishit Seva Medal. Postgraduate in Defense and Strategic Studies from the Universities of Madras and Allahabad, Air Vice Marshal Kapil Kak has authored over 70 book chapters and journal articles on a variety of strategic, national security, defense, and air power issues, and has edited the books India and Pakistan, Pathways Ahead, and Comprehensive Security of an Emerging India. He is the guest speaker at defense and civil institutions of higher learning, including the National Defense College and multiple other Indian and foreign universities. He is a regular commentator on TV and radio networks, both national and foreign. A former deputy director at the Institute of Defense Studies and Analysis in New Delhi, an advisor in strategic studies at the University of Jammu, Air Marshal Kapil Kak is the founding additional director of the Center of Air Power Studies, New Delhi, at which he is currently a distinguished fellow. He is also closely associated with the Track 2 initiatives of many public policy think tanks of Indian Pakistan peace process and conflict resolution in Jammu and Kashmir. In the recent years, he has been a member of the high-level Indian group for the RAND Corporation, sponsored by India-US Track 2 Dialogue under national security and air power issues. He is a member of the Council of Cluster Universities Jammu, Board of National Security Studies, Central University Jammu, and on the board of directors for the New Delhi-based Healing Minds Foundation. A very good evening, Kapil sir. On behalf of the Road Track Club of Sydenham College, I welcome you today. It's quite an honor to have an officer who has served the nation for 40 plus years, and I express my gratitude for coming forth and joining us on this session. How are you feeling today?
I'm fine, thank you, Unmati. And thank you for those kind words of introduction. It sort of boosts me up before I start to speak to such a amazingly intellectual audience and who in fact constitute the future of India. To me, that's a big challenge. It's first my duty and responsibility. Today is the 89th Air Force Day. I think this is a celebration to me, it seems, of the indomitable courage, irrepressible determination, and in fact, unflinching valor of the men and women of the Air Force. You know, the women have been in the Indian Air Force for nearly 30 years, and they have proven in many, many ways superior to their male colleagues. So this is a challenge we accepted, and this is part of the transformation of an institution like the Air Force. So that's one part. The second part is we celebrate these achievements. We also pay our tribute to the tens and thousands of Air Force personnel who have taken part in the wars of the past and made the ultimate sacrifice in the cause of the nation. We must not forget those. They are our permanent etch in our memory banks. I think Indian Air Force, to the pride of the nation, has never let the country down. And I think, as they say, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. It has taken part in the wars of 1947-48. Of course, it seems a very, very distant past for you, the young minds. But this was thrust on us within 2 months of our independence in Jammu and Kashmir. Then 14 years later, we had the Chinese invasion in 1962. Then we had quickly thereafter the war with Pakistan in 1965. And then 6 years later, a war in 1971 in which a country was created militarily. The former East Pakistan became the independent Republic of Bangladesh. And this was done militarily. And I was in that war, and I can share some experience. And then we see 1999 Kargil war. This is in the immediate memory bank of yours. You would remember what happened in that. And then the very famous action of the Indian Air Force at Balakot, where a punitive action was taken against Pakistan for having undertaken a terror act in Pulwama. And you know of yesterday's incidents in the Kashmir Valley, where some elements of the minority community have been specifically targeted. So we, in some ways, are in a continuous trajectory of challenge. And this faces the Air Force and the Army and the Navy in equal measure today. When we talk of the Air Force role, may I suggest that we also look at whatever are the natural challenges, whether it's earthquakes, whether it's floods. There's always, India is a wide geography, wide range of terrains, wide range of meteorological conditions, coastal areas forever being inundated with floods or cyclones or events like that. It's here, I'd like to remind my young listeners and viewers that Indian Air Force is the first responder, because wherever there is a need, the first machine that has to be rushed there with aid, with rations, with support, with medical aid, are the helicopters and the transport aircraft of the Indian Air Force. And we have seen that these, what are called humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, or HADR operations of the Air Force, have been Indian Air Force has been in sort of national mindscape in all these events that I just referred to. I would also like to mention that This is not the time for the Air Force to rest on its laurels, that it has fought so many wars, that it has come to the aid of civil authorities during natural disasters. It's also a time to take a kind of a look at our balance sheet, to look at our books and see what is the current and existential challenge Indian Air Force faces, and how is it equipped, and what needs to be done to be able to not only meet these challenges, but also what lies ahead. Now, this is the geometry of society, conflict, and institutions like the Air Force, which form a kind of a triangle. I may also mention that wars in the last 30 years in various regions, whether it was in Iraq, whether it was the Gulf War, whether it was Georgia, Estonia in 2007, then 2011 in Syria, you're all aware of it. And we know that these are ongoing conflicts. What has been proven without a shade of doubt is the criticality of what is termed the vertical dimension, which means air, near space, space, outer space, the cyber domain, which you are familiar, and of course, information domain, in which we now talk about information wars. So all this requires a range of capabilities. So we are not only we are not only talking of we're not talking about combat aircraft alone. There has to be a whole system of systems which must gel with the combat aircraft and the combat crew, the pilots, navigators, and others who have to be part of this system of systems. I'm talking about transport aircraft, helicopters, radars, weapons and systems. We're talking about artificial intelligence, robotics. These are systems which we have to be familiar with and prepared for in meeting up the challenges of the future. Now, we are only talking also about missiles, which play a very crucial role, which is both air-to-air surface missile and also the surface-to-air missiles. Some of them are hypersonic, as you know, 3 times the speed of sound, that can go up to 500 kilometers. So you don't have to go into enemy territory to deliver a missile. You deliver it from your own side, from your own safety. So this is where Air Force and technology become first cousins. Air Force cannot operate unless, in fact, not first cousins, I would say siblings, because Air Force cannot operate unless it has technology. And the technology is of no use to a nation if you can't find its application in various domains. It's not only in the business management that you do or commerce that you study in which technology is important, but in war fighting and safeguarding the interests and sovereignty and territorial integrity of India. I think this is where a whole range of issues which can be discussed by us in our question answer session. I'm sure there'll be many questions. One factor which is now proven as the clincher in any conflict is air power. The nature of an air power is the domain instrumentality in the hands of the Air Force of India. So as I said earlier, it also has a space dimension to it. Secondly, I just want to share with you that wars of the kind that I fought or was involved with are now passé. Today's war is a different kind of war. You have information domain, you have cyber domain, you have space applications. You can neutralize an adversary's capability by actually soft kill of a satellite, which gives it the capability to navigate, to communicate, to recce and reconnoiter, or for surveillance. All this can be disabled. You're known of the recent cases where critical infrastructure of India and other countries has been momentarily disabled. And this includes banks, it includes government of India. So, I mean, this is a different kind of war. So, while kinetics, I mean, use of explosives to neutralize an adversary target remain important, we have a very wide ranging conflict spectrum which goes from low intensity conflict or proxy war or subconventional war at one end and a nuclear deterrence at the other end. And it is here again that the Air Force plays an extremely important part. Because while you may not fight the war, you may not have an interstate war, it can always happen. Because we live in times where there is huge dollops of what could be termed uncertainty, volatility, fragility. Anything can happen anytime, and we have to be prepared. And that's where the Air Force level of, I mean, this is what I think was referred to earlier. I think Unmati had mentioned this, that if you have to be prepared, what is the nature of that preparedness that you have to have, not now, but also in the future. And future is far more important because that is your domain. You're going to live in that future. I'm not sure how much my future will be as an old fuddy-duddy talking to you today. There is also a factor of what's called nuclearization. I want to draw your attention to a small little 150-page book written by Bernard Brodie immediately after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. All of you would have heard of Hiroshima and Nagasaki when nuclear bombs were dropped by the Americans on Japan. He said, and I quote, "Until now, it was the job of the armed forces to fight and win wars. From now onwards, their job will be to prevent wars." You can imagine what a flutter it would have caused to the machismo of the male muscularity that, look, I'm here to fight wars. And this guy is telling us now the job is to only prevent wars. But that is actually a fact, because this is where the importance lies. And I think I'll finish in the next 2-3 minutes. Importance lies in conventional and nuclear deterrence that you have. Now, in simple terms, what is deterrence? We say deterrence is like beauty. It lies in the eye of the beholder. So what does this mean in practical terms? I have to have sufficient operational infrastructure across a wide swath of capabilities to convey to my adversary that any misadventure you do in terms of intruding in, occupying, or indulging in warfare against me, the reaction will be so hard, that's so unacceptable to you, that the cost you will bear for that will be far out of proportion to the action you take. In very simple words, I have tried to explain deterrence. Now, this is where India will have a very major role. People may say, oh, there are no wars, therefore why the army, why the air force, why the navy? But when there is a war, you don't start inducting people, you don't start getting technologies. And as Plato, you would have heard of the famous student of Aristotle called Plato, who said once and very famously, he said, only the dead have seen the end of conflict. Very profound state. That conflict will, whatever form, human being is designed such that he or she will always indulge in conflict for whatever reason. They may be inexplicable, they may be unfounded, they may not be relevant, but it will happen. So when that happens, are we prepared for that kind of thing? So as I said, the advent of the nuclear weapons with China, with Pakistan, and with India over the last 3 decades or so has actually brought in the nuclearization factor. Nuclear weapon has not been used ever since Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which is a good thing for humankind. I think I'm proud of that fact. Yet, one has to have enough nuclear deterrence in place so that the adversary does not indulge in that option or in the conventional term. I would also like to state that, a point which we often forget, and that is the question of indigenization. I think this was a question Unnati had posed a little while earlier, that we cannot depend as a country and as an air force for constant import of weapons, equipment, and systems from outside. By that, we are actually encouraging those countries to develop their own indigenous industry, what is famously called the military industrial complex, at the cost of the nations to whom they sell these weapons. So a weapon which costs 10 rupees to make in, let's say, country X is sold to India at 1,000 rupees. 990 rupees are pocketed by the exporter. So the question we interacting here today have to ask ourselves in Sydenham College, RCSC, is why must we import? Yes, during the years that we had a constant challenge, we had all these wars. I had just referred to those wars from 47, 48 onwards, right till 1999, the Kargil War. Imports became necessary because the armed forces wanted state-of-the-art weapons. They cannot fight an adversary who has advanced weapons with weapons which are 40-year-old. We lose that war. So they always wanted weapons, and very justifiably so. We have now reached a stage that we are indigenizing more and more. In the question answer session, I can elaborate more on it. But the last point I want to make, and I think this is the question which RCSC, as also the Sydenham College and the faculty, have to address, is that of, do we have the right type of leadership in institutions? That includes Sydenham College, it includes the Indian Air Force. What are the skill sets that we need these leaders to have? What is the environment in which they will go in? Are they equipped such that they can face that environment and emerge unscathed, if not completely successful? I think all institutions face this, and this is, I call it the mind transformation. Unless we transform with the fast, rapidly transforming society in terms of technologies, in terms of challenges, in terms of capabilities and the demands, because at the end of the day, I don't have to remind you, the armed forces in India are, their raison d'etre, their reason for living is to ensure that the socio-economic development of India, which is the primary national security and national strategy driver, that continues unabated and undisturbed, so that adversaries which want to prevent India from rising are not tempted to use force. So therefore, we have to have that capability in us, both in terms of not just machines, but critically, as I said, in terms of the kind of leadership, their toolkits, their skill sets, and their leadership acumen to take their colleagues and friends along. I think with that I will end, and if I'm ready to go even beyond air power and air force to answer any doubts you may have on whether it's international relations, our neighborhood challenges, who are the challengers, where is India going to be 20 years from now, 30 years from now. I can attempt that question, and where do the armed forces fit into that framework? I'd be only too glad to answer. Thank you very much for your patience.
That was actually incredible, sir. I'm quite short of words right now how your 15-minute presentation made me feel. And thank you for allowing me to continue on with the questions. My first question would be that at the age of 17, you joined the Air Force. And you have flew for about 40 years, and you partook in the Indo-Pakistan War of 1971. How did that war shape your career in the Indian Air Force and you as a person in general?
That's a very, very thoughtful question, Anmati. You know, when you join a fighting arm, you want to be in a war, because the raison d'etre for a fighting person, man or woman, is to participate in a war. And I got that opportunity in 1971 I do recollect, whatever one might say. My first mission was we used to fly at night. I was on Canberra bombers. We used to fly at night. Now imagine the scenario: about 500 feet above ground, dark night, go something like 400 kilometers inside the enemy territory, locate a target. We didn't have the technologies then, maps, a pair of eyes, and a general sense of how we were going to get there. Actually got there and did mission. But there was always a little apprehension in one's mind. I mean, one may boast that one is a very brave air warrior. On my first mission, I did have that apprehension. But because the adversary, Pakistan, has always been better equipped than us. It is just that the man and woman behind the machine or operating the machine, that caliber is very high, and we were able to overcome the technological advantages which Pakistan had in 71 war. And the test, you all know, we were able to create a country militarily. So that 71 experience means you firstly have a stamp in your amongst your colleagues, amongst your juniors. Now you are a warrior. You have taken part in a war. You know, it's like the RCSC individuals uh, addressing the Harvard Business School, and when you come back, you say, "I was a guest speaker at Harvard Business School." You know what it does to you. It is equivalent to me as a young, you know, 20s individual who's in a war, and perhaps that has been the last regular war, incidentally, that India has been involved in, as I explained a little while earlier. All the wars thereafter have been limited conventional wars or limited border conflagrations like in Kargil, or like has happened recently in eastern Ladakh when Chinese intruded there. They're still in some areas of and geographies which are contested. Both the Chinese and we have claims to it. We've been patrolling both sides, but they have unfortunately for us stopped our patrolling into those areas. So the point I'm trying to make is that it serves you well for lifetime, and you're recognized that having taken part in bombing missions at night, at low level, at very high speed, and having come unscathed. I give you an instance of I didn't have that experience, but one of my colleagues, and he had another crew member with him, he flew at uh, something like 600 miles an hour under a high tension cable in Pakistan. Can you imagine how low that aircraft is at night? And you know how high the high tension cable? They're not too high. So those were the exciting and glamorous moments of that war one lived.
So, as you said, that it's quite a pride to walk around your colleagues when you have fought in a war. So, has it ever happened that you have sat down with junior officers or cadets who have recently joined the Air Force and shared your stories with them? Has it ever happened?
Yes, along with a senior colleague of mine, started the Center of Air Power Studies, where we not only had junior colleagues of the Air Force, the Army, and the Navy join us for short periods of time as what we call interns or fellows, but we also had on a regular basis academics from Jawaharlal Nehru University. In fact, some of them were also in the faculty. They still are in the faculty. So one does get opportunities to. It's a very interesting dynamic. That experience that you have, you share with others. They keep that experience in their memory bank, then build in more experience with these and move forward. And that is evolution of society all over the world. It's not an exception for India. So yes, it is very much shared. And I have no hesitation in saying that there are many times I've learned from my junior. One must not ever, the worst thing an individual can do to oneself is to have what is termed intellectual arrogance. That is the worst form of damage one can do to oneself, even in career terms, because one has to have a certain degree of humility. One may have rich experience, it must be shared in that paradigm, and only then will it be embraced by the receiver and be of benefit to that. It's not just in the Air Force, it's in all fields of life, including in the intellectual pursuit of security strategy, whether it's business strategy, whether it's military strategy, all those domains. You had asked me about indigenization. I think I could answer that question in a little more detail. One is that at a point of time, we decided this business of importing weapons. In fact, India was second or third largest importer of weapons in the world for long. It's today, I think, come to the second position. So even the current position is unacceptable. But the problem, and I think this young people like you must understand, problem is that do we have the technological prowess to be able to master technology which is denied to us by the powers that have it. No power will want to share its high-end technology with another country, because that country, like India, will master the technology and become a competitor to the sharer of them. So all countries all over the world keep that very, very high-end technology to themselves and part with it only when they get a benefit of either the other country acquiring their weapon system, or perforce if you have to share with it, because otherwise your industry is dead because there is no demand. So I don't know whether I've been able to explain to us. So it just so happens we got, as we built up, I mean, not many people know this, but I want to share with you people that the initial leadership of India in the post-47 period was conscious of. It will surprise many of you that the first design and development bureau for aircraft manufacturing and production was set up within 1 year of India. When we were importing pencils, we set up a design and development bureau. Now you see the vision of our leadership. I, in my young days, flew an aircraft called the Hindustan Trainer, HT2. It was designed, developed, manufactured, and that aircraft was a basic trainer in the Indian Air Force for, I think, if I'm not mistaken, for about 15 to 20 years. Made by us. And then what happened? Now, this is the question asked. If you did that, we had a fighter aircraft, which was a collaboration between Dr. Gatke, an Indian designer, and Kurt Tank, a German 1971 war also. It was called the HF Hindustan Fighter 24, HF-24. It had an excellent flight safety record. But unfortunately, it didn't have the engine, the power plant to enable it to match up with the supersonic environment. Because all the fighters of our adversaries had supersonic aircraft. So that project had to be abandoned. Also, because there were so many wars coming, we needed equipment which was imported quickly so that our capability did not get diluted in any way. But now, I've given you this long background primarily to say we are at a point that we have mastered the technology. We started mastering the manufacturing and production technologies thanks to our large imports from Russia. Whether it was the MiG-21, the MiG-23, the MiG-25, the MiG-27, MiG-29, and then after that, the major buy of the Sukhoi 30 was one of the finest aircraft. We did pick up this, but design part we were not quite sure about. You have to start with a drawing board and design an aircraft, draw pencils, and now of course you don't draw with pencil. You do computer assisted design and development. And we have produced the Tejas Mark 1, two of the squadrons are flying. Of course, they have much to attain before they can become state-of-the-art fighters to suit our environment. But the development of those into HAL manufactured Tejas Mark 1A, 83 of which have been ordered by the Indian Air Force, to be followed by the Mark II Tejas, followed thereafter by the Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, AMCA. Now, these are next, this answers the question about what is the next 20 years, what will the Air Force be like? That was your question. The Air Force will largely be indigenous. It will be our own platform. Yes, we don't have the capability to manufacture an aircraft engine. There's a consortium world over who are like the high table club members. They don't part the technology for engine manufacture. And that has been our weak area. Fortunately, now efforts are in hand to see that the engine manufacturing capability also gets a boost in the Indian indigenous sector. I also want to share with you that contrary to earlier occasions, we now have a far larger involvement of the private sector in military aircraft manufacturing. You would have read reports of the CN-295, which is an Airbus aircraft which will replace the Avro HS-748 transport aircraft of the Indian Air Force. And 56 of them are going to be in the air in the next few years. 16 will come in a flyaway condition. And interestingly, the Tata Industries will manufacture it in India. So we get capability not only for fighter aircraft, but also for military tactical aircraft like the CN-295. And after that, to my mind, if you look at 20, 30 years from now, why not we have our own equivalent of the Airbus or the Boeing? Why must you fly from Mumbai to Kolkata or Mumbai to Delhi in an aircraft manufactured in the United States or in France? Why can't it be manufactured in India? Because the answer to the question whether we have economies of scale is automatically answered by the growth in civil aviation in India. Earlier, people who traveled in the second class of trains are now regular air travelers. So there will be a huge mass of air travelers in India. And I think that's one area which we can I think that by and large answers the 3 or 4 questions. If you have any more, I'll only be too glad, and we can go even beyond the Air Force.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely, sir. I believe that India has a lot to achieve, and we are going on a strong path. The Indian Air Force recently introduced giving benefits to indigenous anti-drones, and we have our Prime Minister bringing up various schemes such as Atmanirbhar Bharat, giving benefits to those indigenous initiatives. What do you think should be an initiative that pushes the Indian sector, both private and public, to help in the nation and the Indian Air Force grow in general?
Very, very pointed question, Unmati. I think this is the challenge for India. What Prime Minister has put forth before the country is the imperative of indigenization across the spectrum. You named drones. Of course, drones are very, very key systems we need. These are unmanned aerial vehicles. There's no pilot. They're operated from the ground, recovered from the ground very safely. They carry a payload which can be employed either for reconnaissance and surveillance, which is the commonest application, military application of a drone. You have heard of the American Global Hawk and the Predator. Global Hawk has an endurance about 10 to 12 hours. And it can give you granular details of whatever you wanted to look at, because that has to be pre-fed as to what it must look at constantly over a period, and then feedback. The feedback is also automatic. It's the communications are networked, and they are in many ways rendered safe through protocols introduced into the what's termed operational data links. So yes, drones is something that we have to do. Beyond drones, we have to also look at platforms which employ artificial intelligence, which employ robotics. It is not that the human being is rendered redundant. It is just that the human being becomes an exposure point in an adversary's environment. That machine can be shot and one loses a precious human being, and you know how much it means to train that human being. It requires tens of crores of rupees to train a man or woman as a pilot, as a combat pilot. And we know, you know, that we have women combat pilots, fighter pilots today. There's one girl who's flying the best of the combat planes in the world today in Indian skies, which is the French Rafale, which has just been inducted or is in the process of being inducted. So I think drones application that program is on. It is just that the best of our technology and managers of the technology unfortunately leave the shores of India. So it is a circular problem that you have the IITs, you have the IIMs, they produce the best. And where do they go? They go to the United States of America. And then we lose, it's indeed a brain drain. Although people say it's a brain gain because they go there and become even more advanced in their knowledge and applications of technology. But we lose them forever. We may get them temporarily because generation of the Indian expats in the United States are 4 million, and they are all high-end earners. They're not. In my young days, they were clerks and they were sweeping the floors of aerodromes and so on. No, not today. The highest median income of any expatriates in America today are the Indians. They occupy the highest levels of income brackets. So I have answered your question in myriad ways that while we need those technology applicators and technology domain experts, they are all abroad. And we have to build constantly from within, and to get to that stage to manufacture very high-end platform becomes a big challenge. There's also another 2-3 quick points I want to make in response to your question. We do not have a national aerospace strategy. For everything that you want to accomplish in the larger domain and specialist domain like aerospace, it means air as also space, which means space satellites, which also means air platforms that we are talking about. There is no, and I have been in the public domain writing on this for nearly 2 decades. Why can't the national level either have a National Aeronautics Commission or a national aerospace strategy? One can keep certain confidential aspects of that strategy under the wraps in the famous files of South Block in New Delhi. But whatever is not unclassified, whatever is not classified, can be pushed out in the public domain. So if Unnati Singh wants to traverse that path, she knows where Indian aerospace industry, indigenously built, is going in the years ahead. Yes.
Yes, sir. So we have come to a close of our interview, close to the end. And my last question to you is, what would be the final words you'd like to leave with the audience, most of whom are of younger generation? How should we proceed in our career, in our life, and work for the best of our nation?
You see, as I mentioned to you earlier, an old fuddy-duddy, if he wants to be a good person, must never advise the young If I tell my teenager granddaughter what is good for her, she will tell me, Nanu, climb the tree. I know what's good for her. I hope you're doing that to your grandparents. But that was on a lighter side. But on the more serious side, let me first enumerate to you the contours of where India is going. If you understand that, how you fit up into that India becomes very easy. India is, now this will surprise you, but some studies I did 15, 20 years ago, they're valid even today. In 2047, India would have been an independent country for 100 years. May I suggest to you, Gunmati, that India will be possibly the second most powerful nation on earth, just 25 years. I see China with a big if. China will be certainly far ahead of us, but there are problems there. Even if we don't count China's problems and look at its achievements, which are far more than us, it is aeons ahead of us. It will remain aeons ahead of us in every sense of the term, per capita income, GDP, technological prowess, in everything. The United States is the third power. So if we look at ourselves as one of the three most powerful nations on earth, 100 years after our independence, you know the gravitas India enjoys in the global, whether it's in business, whether it's in war fighting, whether it's in technology, it's in trade, whatever domains, or academia, or thought leadership, which is very important because you are the thought leader with the kind of capability you have today. So in that sense, unfortunately for us, we have a weak political system. No, I'm not criticizing any government. It is just that while democracy is the best form, as Churchill once famously said, you may have many challenges posed by democracy because there is no better system of government than the democratic framework. Undoubtedly true. But unfortunately, in recent years, we have seen democracy now becoming more in the nature of an ethnocracy. An ethno, what shall I say, electoracy. You're basically looking at an election. In that election, what is the geography, what is the caste arithmetic, and how can I win? Because it's very highly competitive politics. So this, in a sense, is a weakness for America too. It's not that America is very hopelessly divided divided on ethnic lines. I mean, having been an independent nation decades ahead of us, it still is divided, as they call the red land and the blue land in terms of Republicans and Democrats. But the problem is on racial lines, it is divided. We as a nation, and this is the sum and substance of the little point I'm submitting before you. As I said, you are the leaders of today and tomorrow. You have to insulate India through your efforts against any efforts made to weaken it, to polarize it, to divide it. We have to have, in the ultimate security and strategic realm, we have to have pluralism, democracy, secularism, inclusivism, because without inclusivism, we will create pockets of resistance within our own country. And there is no greater binder for us as a power than the need to have internal coherence as a society, as a nation, so that we can grapple with the challenges. My third point is that of character, levels of integrity, and levels of professionalism. There is no compromise on any of these principles. We have, unfortunately, due to certain internal weaknesses, we have tended to compromise with these. And you know more than anyone else sitting in Mumbai what happens on a day-to-day basis, who is caught, who is not caught. We have seen the recent Pandora papers, which have figured in the new national newspapers. Now, they may not be, I may not cast aspersions on anybody, but obviously efforts are being made. This money could have been within India, in our banks, for our growth and development, and not elsewhere. So obviously efforts are being made to create structures within banks, outside, to evade certain scrutiny, whether by outsiders or within India. So this kind of thing, unless we get rid of, unless we become genuinely inclusive, democratic, pluralistic, remain united, resist any efforts to divide us on ethnic or caste or class lines, unless we do that, we will face challenges. And it is best to prevent those challenges come on the horizon through efforts of young Rotaract meeting people at the Sydenham College. You meet regularly. These are the thoughts you have to exchange amongst yourselves and evolve a geometry to address both the geography of these challenges and the functionalities of these challenges.
If I could, sir, I would ask you to just go on with your, because the expertise you have brought to our show, the way you have communicated across all the points that you wish to put, it was excellent. I really enjoyed it. And I'm quite saddened that we have come to an end. On behalf of the Rotaract Club of Sydenham College, I express my heartfelt gratitude, because this was such an enlightening experience, and I'm sure that the audience is inspired by your words. It was an honor to have you with us, and we salute you and all the officers of the Indian Air Force for your service for the nation. The club wishes you the best of health, the best of everything, and I hope you have a great day ahead.
Thank you very much, Unmati. I'd also like to thank Dipanksha and, of course, Parth Barot and Jignan Patel and Mrunjay More and other colleagues who have been listening in, but you have been talking on their behalf. And I, for one, found this session hugely. This is not a mutual admiration society. Let me say this very categorically. But I, for one, was deeply impacted by the pointed nature of your questions, which goes to show that you have studied the subjects. You have gone into details, granular details on understanding what the issues are. And even when I tried to take you away from air power and Air Force into the broader strategic and security realm of India, you were on dot, on point, and very, very thoughtful. Once again, Unmati, thank you very much, and thank Panksha on my behalf for giving me this opportunity to interact with such young, ignited minds. And I have no doubt, if RCSR is the representative factor, element or entity of the youth of India, India is in very safe hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
रोको ना सपनों के तूफानों को, रोको ना जज्बों की उड़ानों को, रोको ना आंखों के निशानों को। आग जैसे बरसा दे ये इरादे, जिगरा है जिगरा है जिगरा है जिगरा है, जिगरे से निकलेंगी चिंगारियां। वो जिगरा है जिगरा है जिगरा है जिगरा है, जिगरे से निकलेंगी चिंगारियां।
Greetings to everyone present here. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome our guest speaker, Wing Commander Ritu Naik, and all our audience joining us to the YouTube live session. My name is Vedant Nukle, and I would be interviewing Ritu ma'am today on the occasion of Indian Air Force Day. With abounding expertise in operations and project management in the VUCA world, and excellence in adaptability, diversity, and inclusion. Now, for our audience who aren't familiar with the VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, which are the general conditions and situations in the defense and business world. Having a reliable history of working in the military industry, an immense experience in missile guidance radar and surface to air missile launching systems, she brings 14 years of comprehensive work experience in the Indian Air Force to the table. Heavily skilled in analytical skills, management, engineering, leadership, and strategy, and currently pursuing a certification in business management for defense officers from IIM Indore. We welcome Wing Commander Mrs. Ritu Naik.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I hope everyone is safe, healthy, and you're taking all precautions against COVID. At the outset, I would like to thank Ms. Unnati Singh, Mr. Vedant, Dipangsha, and all other members of Rotary Club for giving me this opportunity to interact with all the beautiful and young minds, or rather, I would say all the versatile and fertile minds out here. About me, I belong to a very small place, yet very significant place as far as the struggle for independence of our nation is concerned. And a very important point about that place is that the movement against British rule was led by a woman, and she was a very powerful and brave woman. By now, I think you people would have guessed that I belong to Jhansi, and I take immense pride in saying so, that I belong to the place of Jhansi Ki Rani. About me, I did my schooling from Jhansi, and later on I did my engineering from UP Technical University. Thereafter, I joined Indian Air Force, and now I have completed 14 years of my tenure, and I am looking forward for a transition. I was a technical officer in Indian Air Force, and I got the opportunity to work in the missile systems, and I really felt privileged to be a part of this great organization.
Thank you so much for being with us here today, ma'am. It's an honor for us to have you with us.
It's
Well,
all
then
my
let's get started. Let's get started with the interview, shall we?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So my first question to you will be, was it your dream to work with the air arm of the Indian Armed Forces?
All right. Well, I'll take you to my childhood. During my 7th or 8th class, I came across a magazine called CSR. There I saw a big advertisement of Indian Air Force, and it was written Air Force Day, 8th October. And since my date of birth is 7th of October, so that day I thought that probably I have been born to join Indian Air Force. And it was a girl child dream in 1990s to join Indian Air Force, which kept me focused towards my goal. And later I joined Indian Air Force after completion of my engineering.
That's great, ma'am. I'd like to wish you a belated happy birthday.
Thank you
And
so much.
yeah, to that, I'd like to add another question. That is, how has the Indian Air Force helped you grow as a person throughout your career?
All right. Indian Air Force has refined my leadership skills, and it has provided all-round development of my personality, I would say. You get ample of opportunities here. You have a lot of sports and adventure opportunities. And the moment you join Indian Air Force as an officer, you get to lead a team. You are always in the leadership role. So that just refines your personality in the area of leadership. You get to initially you would be leading a team, thereafter you would work as a mid-senior level, thereafter you would be senior level, taking important decisions of your unit. So, and that too, as you mentioned rightly, in the VUCA environment. So this VUCA world, it is associated to corporate, but I would say it is more associated to defense as well. So you get ample of opportunities to grow yourself, and all-round development of an individual takes place. Also, I would say that there are various in-service courses in the organization, which helps to broaden your horizon. And after doing those courses, you would definitely see refinement in your professional as well as in your personal growth as well.
That's great. That's great. Also, you have an impressive 14 years of experience working with the Indian Air Force and multiple certifications. So, would you like to share with the audience any of your experience?
Yeah, I have multiple certifications. That's right. But those certifications are, I have taken those certifications because I am in the transition phase of my career. So I've taken this PMP certification, which is Project Management Professional, then Lean Six Sigma, Green Belt, and Black Belt. So all these are concerned with the operations management, wherein I think that I would be transiting to in the corporate world. So this is all in that regard.
Right. Also, amongst our viewers, we might have some who want to join the Indian Air Force. So, next is a question related to our career aspects, stating what are the career aspects in the Indian Air Force for non-flight cadets? Like, what is the enrollment criteria for them? If you could just throw a light.
Yeah, definitely. I would be happy to answer that. It's a great excitement to see that all young people are looking forward for a good opportunity and career in Indian Air Force. That's really welcoming to interact with you people, that you are interested to join armed forces and lead by example. So when you join Indian Air Force, you can join basically in flying branch as well as in the ground duty branch. So when you join ground duty branches, there are other two branches, like you can broadly categorize them as technical and non-technical. In non-technical are the ground and support services, wherein you can join in fields like education, accounts, law, meteorological department, and admin, etc. and all. So there are great opportunities. And for age and medical criteria, I hope everyone is aware of a site called careerairforce.nic.in. You can visit that site, and there you can check your age criteria, your medical criteria as well. Medical criteria is very important when you join defense forces. So a lot of emphasis is given to that. If you do not satisfy the medical criteria, even after passing SSB, then you won't be selected. So that is why I request everyone to stay healthy, stay fit, and come and join Indian Air Force.
That advice is something that we need in this time the most. So moving on to the next question. You have attained PMP certification, LSSGB, and LSSBB. So could you please elaborate on what these courses are?
As I mentioned in the previous question, that PMP is Project Management Professional. It is done from PMI. PMI is Project Management Institute. It is in US. So you get this certification. This is globally recognized certification, which you get. You have to give an exam, which is a 4-hour long duration exam. And people say that it is a little difficult to crack it, but hard work is the key to success. And thereafter, I have done Lean Six Sigma Green Belt and Lean Six Sigma Black Belt certification. So these are all certifications in regard to operations management, as I told in the previous question also. I'm in the transition phase of my career. So I have done these certifications because I'm looking forward for a career opportunity in operations management in the corporate world.
That is mighty impressive, ma'am. So the next question that we have is women-centric. So ever since you became an Air Force officer until today, what kind of changes have you seen concerning the participation of women in the Indian Air Force?
All right, this is a very interesting question. When I joined Indian Air Force, I was the first woman officer to join that unit. Like I told you, I was in the missile system. So I was in a field where I was the only one in that unit. But now I see a lot of girls are coming forward and they are joining Indian Air Force. So that is really welcoming change. That is one change that I've seen. And the second change, I think everyone is aware of that. You would also be aware of that now women officers are flying fighter jets. So that is the second change that I've seen, and it is really welcoming.
Yes. Also, you have got a special experience of working on missile guidance radar and surface to air missile launching system. I believe that's a crucial role to play. So, what is an ordinary workday for you? Like, what does an ordinary workday of yours look like?
All right. A soldier is always on duty. You would have heard of this. And when you
Yes.
join Indian Air Force as an officer, there's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. There are a lot of men under you who are looking up to you. So you should always be ready in daytime or nighttime. Whenever any requirement comes, you have to go and attend.
Absolutely. So there's a connected question to this. At times it might be you might feel that it's overwhelming for you to attend such things. So what do you do to get out of those situations? Like not exactly escape, but get your mind free of that.
Actually, I have never felt like that. It was exciting. It was always exciting to work that way. And I'll tell you one thing, whenever I was busiest, it motivated me to work more. So I never felt that I need to escape, not exactly escaping, that how to deal with the situation that I'm, busy or something. So I never felt like that because you get to stay in the Air Force station itself. And every part of that Air Force station becomes your home as well as your work area. So that's the beauty of the organization.
Right. Words of a true soldier, I must say. The next question that I have is, so as mentioned earlier, you're currently pursuing a certification in business management for defense officers from IIM Indore. So how will it aid you as you join the corporate world?
Right. See, I told you that I'm in the transition phase. I have already completed my tenure. So this is a resettlement program which is offered by DGR to all defense officers. So I'm going through this 6-month certification program, and thereafter we would tie up with different corporate companies, and we'll try to get suitably placed.
Right. So I have one extra question for you, ma'am. So you being a woman have been successful in your career. So there might be many such women trying to get in the Indian Armed Forces. So could you please tell something motivational for our viewers, especially the women viewers who are trying to pursue a career in the Indian Armed Forces?
Okay. I would say come out of your zone. It is absolutely fascinating career, and you can actually enjoy your life over here. You can enjoy your profession as well as your personal life, and you would never get bored with your routine work. Life will not be monotonous. You will become more creative. Your mind will always remain fertile, and it's a challenging yet very satisfying career. So just come out of your zone, come out of your comfort zone, join it. And if you want to join, I'm not forcing you to join. In case if you are interested, you can come and join it. And in case anybody has specific queries, they can always connect to me, and I welcome whosoever wants to connect to me, and I can help in clarifying their doubts further in case they have any.
I'm sure you must have inspired at least one girl today to join the Indian Armed Force. So
Sure.
I believe it's already time. And I must say, when things are going interesting, time really does fly by. So thank you, ma'am, for joining with me on this interview. So any final thoughts or any words that you'd like to leave with the audience?
Stay happy, stay healthy, and get vaccinated. That's the most important thing in this pandemic. And I would like to say that you have given me this opportunity, all of you, Road Track Club, you have given me this wonderful opportunity, and I'm really feeling excited, and it was a great pleasure to interact with all of you.
Thank you so much for your kind words, ma'am. As we said earlier, it's an honor to have you with us.
It's all mine.
You're just being too modest right now. Also, ma'am, as we see, you celebrated your birthday yesterday. So, on the behalf of entire club, I'd like to wish you a belated happy birthday.
Oh, so sweet of all of you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, ma'am. Now, I'd like to move on to the vote of thanks. On behalf of the Rotaract Club of Sydenham College, I express my heartfelt gratitude to you. This was an enlightening experience and it was an honor to have you with us today. We salute you and all the officers of the Indian Air Force for your service to the nation. The club wishes you the best and may you have a great day ahead. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much and best of luck to each and every one of you.
मैं लड़ जाना है लहू में एक चिंगारी जिद से जुनू तक है जाना हर कतरा बोल रहा अल्लाह जिंदे बन के कफन जग तुरिया तन के मौत नू बचा मारे थर थर कंबदे सारे अल्लाह जिंदे बन के कफन जग तुरिया तन के मौत नू बचा मारे थर थर कंबदे सारे.
A very warm greeting to everyone present over here. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this Indian Air Force Day special webinar connect, designed in conjugation and association with Sydenham College of Rotaract Club. And aim for this episode is to celebrate our country, celebrate our hero, celebrate the people who are fighting at the borders and fighting outside the border to make this a safer and more prosperous land that we call home. Let me commence by wishing you a very happy Indian Air Force Day. My name is Samiksha Puranik and I am truly humbled and grateful to all the enthusiastic participants who have joined us. Thank you very much. A very esteemed and eminent keynote speaker that we have on board. He is ex-Sergeant Shete, SP, with 26 years of bona fide service in Air Force, out of which 8 years as in VIP unit and 12 years as an instructor, training a Tetra instructor and remaining many other service-related courses. He's currently working in Wings College of Aviation, Pune. Well, his full name is, and what prefix should we add? Mr., Doctor, or Major? He's none other than ex-Sergeant Mr. Subhash B. Shete. Welcoming you, sir.
Thank
Hello,
you.
sir. How are you?
I'm quite comfortable. Hello.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah. Guys, trust me, this session is going to be very productive and curiosity generating. There are so many stories, so many experiences, and so many perspectives to share with you. We'll try to encapsulate it in this single episode. His past, everything he learned from some of his most intense moments, brought to you by Sydenham Rotaract Club. Sir, it's an absolute honor to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sir, did I introduce you right? Because when it comes to Indian Air Force, the Aam Janta, that is the common people, they do not understand the regiments or the IAF divisions. I mean, there's a lot of pride when it comes to Indian Air Force, but they don't know much about it. Could you expand a little bit about what it entails? Because I'll tell you what perspective I'm coming from. We see so much about US Navy serials, Marines, due to the media and Hollywood projections. Their portrayal of unit is very forced and intense. But here we are, even stronger. Our Bharatiya Vayu Sena ranks 4th in the world. There's not much about it out there, I know, but the perception is going to change in the next 10 to 20 years. But if the change had to begin with this question, how would you introduce the Indian Air Force to the Indian audience?
See, during my stay, the modernization or the present condition is entirely different. Our time, we were having very limited forces, limited aircraft, limited manpower, limited accessories, and very much limited sources available during our periods. But still, during that time, we were prepared to fight with enemies or with any country attacking over India. So we prepared for that, and we are 24 hours on job to prepare for any fighting or any aggressive forces facing towards us. Okay.
Indeed, sir, that was very crisp and clear introduction of the Indian Air Force. Probably, I'd like to highlight one thing about the Indian Air Force. Just know, you are friendly with them in but I know I'm disciplined and very tough. And through very intense environment, the common public knows about it, but they don't really know. So, through the medium of storytelling, I would love for you to take us through the journey. Like when you were 20, what was a 20-year-old mindset for NDA? What was the journey from age, say, 20 to being in an all-out Indian Air Force?
See, as a age of 20, we are just entered to the professional services, but we are not aware of what is Air Force, what is Navy, what is Army. But once I have completed this NCC, I came I came to know something about defense. And when the requirement came from the nation, that is during 65 emergency, I was having planned to join the Air Force as I was advised by the NCC commander. He gave me a special letter to join in Indian Air Force and do the services for the nation. And with that ambition, I just reported to the recruiting center and I was joined within 3 days. I was joined as a airman, Sipahi, as we call Sipahi in Army, and seaman in Navy, and airman in Air Force. And out of these 3 combat forces, Air Force is the topmost and very much in advanced stage during that time also. So without knowing anything or without informing to my parents, first I reported for recruitment, and after complete selection, my parents were told that I have joined in Indian Air Force. Now I am going to serve for my family, for my younger brothers, elder brothers, sisters, and my mummy, papa. Then after joining, they started weeping because I'm departing from the parents. Then when I just joined the training, the first day of training was similar to my NCC campus. So I did not feel something abnormal. I was very much acquainted with the campus and camp activities and surroundings. So it was not much change for me, but I was very happy to be continued in the training period. But training period was very tough. At home, I used to get up at about 8 o'clock in the morning, whereas in Air Force, during training period, I used to get up at 5 o'clock, and 6 o'clock we used to go for health run. Then after health run, we were given time for 1 hour for breakfast and joining with complete uniform wearing and joining the classes, technical classes. Then parade. All these activities were so tough. So I could take it as a sportly and very decently and disciplined manner, and I have completed the course with very much proud. And after completion of training, I completed my training in Kanpur for number 4 GTS, Ground Training School. Then from there, I was posted, after completion of training, I was posted to Paratroopers Training School, Agra. And there I was as a technician for 1966 up to 72. And during this period, I was in Paratroopas Training School and a big transport aircraft, packet aircraft. It was packet aircraft, Fairchild packet aircraft. And during 71 war, I was very much active on the toes continuously 24 hours. We were not getting time to sleep. We used to, when the aircraft is flying, sometimes we used to lie down in the aircraft for some period, very short period. And in emergency, such a emergency, we used to go to the airport and messes and collect the food for our all colleagues working together in the aircraft. Likewise, we were 24 hours on the job. And that was very critical period for the war period. But war period, we were on toes, but otherwise also in peace period, also we used to have exercises to prepare for war at any moment. Okay.
True that, sir. That was an incredible story. Like right from Air Sapai to Kanpur to Agra, and then later going to 1971 war. That is really incredible. That's very brave of you. Sir, I want to bring this conversation to a very individual level to you. Correct me if I am wrong. One thing I've psychoanalyzed from your story that you just said, that there have been three versions of you. The first version was the guy, you are the guy who started studying for the Indian Air Force. The second version is the guy who was very passionate and busy serving the country for straight 26 years. He took the call of roller coaster rides to change things. And third version is the guy who you are right now, a purpose-driven person. Of course, there is you who is still evolving. Probably there is going to be fourth, fifth, sixth version of you as well. I have seen this three distinct version of you from the story that you just said. A part of you, sir, I feel like you have seen so many layers of things in your life. I'd I'll love to, sir, help us to go and take you through this journey of different mindset. I am sure there are going to be more mindset that you have endured, but don't you agree with me that there were like different mindsets, 3 or 4 max in your life? You have had that self-evolution or something.
See, war period is different and peace period also is, we are enjoying equally peace period. Now, I was very much interested in music and musical instruments. So I was playing all the rhythm instruments. I have trained, I got a training from suitable persons, and afterwards I became a musician also. For that is an extracurricular activities. So I used to entertain my all colleagues during peace period. What are the functions like celebrations of this unit anniversaries or ram panchayats or some good gathering or somebody's marriage anniversaries, we used to celebrate, and I used to entertain them with a proper singing of songs, vagara vagara.
That's
So,
very great of you, sir. Yeah, you can continue.
still, as on today, I am playing octopad or a drum set, still playing, and during college annual functions, I am very willfully joining and enjoying, like Dasera. I used to play drums for the Garba dance, and annual gathering or any other functions in the unit, this college, I used to give my gratitude. I used to expose myself, encourage the youngsters to do the programs as best as possible. I used to give about 5 to 6 songs at a stretch continuously and entertain the students as well as staff. even on Women's Day, etc. We used to prepare some delicious food and enjoy the food along with all uh, members, faculties, and Shastri group of institute, a complete staff members. We used to come together and enjoy the food.
Incredible, sir. You have that inclination towards arts as well. Like you have that inclination for the music. You're very creative because being in an army, a person is very disciplined. So people don't have that inclination, but you are like all rounder. Well, it was very thoughtful and incredible. I really like the idea of you highlighting the art as well. Let's dive a bit deep. I really want you to know how you guys have your own trajectory. Like when you join the Air Force, it's a very different mentality that you guys have. Now, from outside looking in, I believe that it's because of two things. The first thing is the mentality, and second thing is the mentality that you develop during the training. So you'll explain that to me, and I'd love if you cover this aspect in this episode. And the second thing is the actual combat, like the actual battlefield. The theory that you learned, the practicals, what you studied, it really changes you as a human being. So do you agree when I say that?
Definitely.
Yeah. So
Definitely.
could you, yeah. Could you enlighten this phase of life, what you gained as a man? I feel every human being has a process of being a child to becoming an adult. It does happen repeatedly, but specifically when we are talking about the Indian Air Force,
Yeah.
I feel like there have been two big changes. First is your training, and second is when you actually go through the combat. I'd love to know that, sir.
Defense services first teaches the discipline. Defense services, Army, Air Force, Navy, they teach the discipline, punctuality, and obedience. These three things are always must be born in the mind, that you have to face the discipline. You have to be very much disciplined in the society or in your surroundings. You have to impress yourself as a good person, decent person, polite person, or sometimes you become aggressive. Then also there also comes some part of discipline. Secondly, obedience. Whatever the orders given by the seniors or the equivalent colleagues, you have to accept the acceptance. A type of work is entirely different than the acceptance. Your acceptance must be on priority. You have to accept the task. Let it be, the task may be anything, even grass cutting, in jungle cutting, even surrounding cleaning, sweeping, wiping off with the water or wiping off the surfaces, cleaning, means whatever the task given should be first accepted. That is acceptability. That is called obedience. Then discipline, obedience, punctuality. Whatever the task given should be completed within the stipulated time period. Time period also is a bound. So within this so and so period, you have to complete the task and hand over the task to the seniors. If the task is not completed within the stipulated time, what happens? Your reflection, your imagination, your power is remarkable. Should be, you must be very much prompt in punctuality, discipline, and obedience. These three things are taught me, are born in my blood. It is in my blood. So whatever the task accepted, I have to accept. I do it. I present myself as a disciplined and decent person. Even this is very much applicable, useful, and beneficial when you exposed to any civil or social services. I was a member of orchestra. I used to go 10 minutes, 15 minutes before and arrange the instrument, the audience come, we to prepare for the readiness of our orchestra. I was in Jodhpur, I was member of 5 orchestras. So whichever comes on priority, I used to attend, I used to play the drum set, and I used to sing the songs and entertain the public. And I used to earn good amount of earning. Apart from music, I was expert or professional in paintings also. Drawing, paintings, sceneries, landscape, seascapes, nearly about 5 lakh rupees I have earned from music and painting. And this is in the spare time of Air Force duties. Air Force duties used to be morning 7:30 up to 2 o'clock. Then afterwards we were free. So in that remaining hours, I used to learn the music. I used to do the paintings. Sometimes I used to prepare the greeting cards, handmade greeting cards. I used to sell it off to the shops, to the institutes, to the organizations. I used to go various organizations, even banks and big offices where my art is to be appreciated, and they used to purchase with happy mood. And nearly about 6 to 8 paintings are gone out of India, my big oil paintings. So I was very much expertised on or professional in music, painting, and even in the sports. So all these 3 activities are very much essential for these institutional purposes. I used to motivate the students in all respect. Apart from teaching, my teaching was extraordinary. My way of teaching is definitely extraordinary, and nearly about 32 engineers which are trained by me. They are working in Qatar Airlines and UAE, and some of the engineers are already in UK and USA. So this is my dedication towards the students of upcoming generation.
That's
How
amazing.
do you like it?
Sir. Yeah, sir, it's very incredible. Like the kind of inclination for music and then art and drawing, and you used to do that between Air Force duties. That's really incredible. Hats off to you, sir. The kind of dedication you have and the love for your students, and of course, I'm very sure you are the most incredible professor. Sir, but I would love if you elaborate more on your training period. Like, what was your mindset when you went through it? The training period, like you have to go and do many exercises or something like that. What was the
Yes.
complete transition between that period? Could you elaborate a bit?
See, physical exercise like parade, PT, parade. Not only that, other sports also. Sometimes we used to play football, volleyball, basketball, cricket. And I used to play cricket. I used to play volleyball along with the students. Even as on today, at the age of 76, I am still joining with the students for the sports. And that is physical exercise to maintain your fitness, reduce your weight and maintain the fitness. As on today, my weight is not more than 58 to 60 kg. Whereas during joining of Air Force and as on today, the weight of my physique, the difference of weight is not more than 5 kg. So I am maintaining still joining of Air Force till today. I am maintaining my health, and our surprising is that I don't use spectacle. Even though both the eyes are cataract operated, but I was not required to use the spectacles. That was a greatness of the medical facilities given by Air Force. And I am totally fit even at the age of 76. बताइए.
Amazing, sir. Like the physical attributes and everything
Fitness.
that you undergo through, like you military people, when it comes to Indian Air Force or something, we have so much pride about it that you guys are very disciplined and very tough. Indeed, the way you connected about the trainings and combats, I really believe that when you complete the training and the pressure test, you're completely a different person, more resilient, more robust,
Yes.
and more you.
Correct.
Ditto with the story of a diamond. Initially, it is very crude and raw, but then after a lot of processing and polishing, it gains the ability to outshine everyone. And I feel the same about you, sir. So you stand out from the crowd.
Definitely.
Yeah. So are you allowed to share any past incidences which were the most difficult mission in your tenure? Which adversities did you face while dealing with it? What you found challenging?
Yes. Challenging. That is my health. I'm proud of my health. First thing that I was in Chandigarh. From there, we used to operate the. क्या हुआ? We used to operate the helicopters for high hills or high altitude. That is Leh, Ladakh, and Thais, Jammu, Kashmir, and remote high altitude areas where we used to supply the ration for the soldiers, those who are at the border or hill posts, to security, BSF, such people, they for to provide the ration, medicines, fuel, petrol for their vehicles, etc. Then we used to go at such areas where -22, -17 degrees of high altitude area, where the area is full of snow. And such areas we used to stay for 1 or 2 months together, and we have to give the services to helicopter and provide the food supply, everything for the soldiers and the people staying there at border security forces, etc. So these are the very acute periods, or with the grace of God, rather we can say, we used to get 6 cylinders of oxygen, but out of 6 cylinders, I used to hardly use 1 or 2 cylinders, and remaining cylinders I used to give to our colleagues and even pilots. They consume more oxygen because they are on the combat work at such altitude. So I used to even help my giving extra oxygen to them. And I was very much proud of my own health without any sickness. So these are all this combat or very tense services where you will feel sometimes very much loneliness or anything.
Yes, so that's a real tough mindset, and you're very generous. Like you gave your cylinder to that person, and at till this age, you are very fit and healthy, and you don't even wear spectacles. That is a very incredible thing. Like your dedication to the fitness is at another level, sir. So
Definitely.
So as you mentioned, like previously, you have participated in 1971 war. Could you explain what was your role in it, and how did you felt like you were in the war? And we don't know, like war is completely unpredictable. What is the next moment? Could you elaborate more?
Definitely. See, we used to just relax in our tents. But as soon as the siren sounds, we used to get up in whatever condition, in overall or in PT shorts, whatever the condition we used to leave the location and escape and come on the trenches and secure yourself in trenches. Then wait for the next order of movement. Likewise, there is no time to rescue others and rescue yourself. That is a war period. And during this war period, my wife was alone at Agra, and Agra was the first day of war attack. But she was escaped. She was, of course, safe in area. And then I got little time period to reach to home. Then I told her to go alone from Agra to Pune. She had traveled alone from Agra to Pune. Then I was comfortable to move for the war activities. I was just recently married. I got married in 70, and immediately after 6 months of my marriage, the war period started. So immediately I left her to home, and I was quite active on the war activities.
Indeed, sir. Like the kind of contribution you gave to the country, as well as you managed your family at that time, it's really difficult. Like when you go for a war and your whole family is there waiting for you, and you don't know, life is completely unpredictable, and still you gave that risk. No, I have to serve my country, whatever happens. Outstanding, sir. Sir, when you talk with a warrior, then only you understand the mindset of a warrior. And I'm 100% sure the respect for Indian officers is not for the stories, but from the moment when you sign up for it. This requires bravery and a lot of courage, and that's the reason we salute you, sir. Sir, would you like to give a signing off message to the youth for their future endeavors?
See, you should have national integrity. You should love the country. You should be proud of India. You are supposed to be proud of India. You are born in India. That is the greatest achievement. Once you are achieved some career, better you join Air Force as a soldier, or as a Sipahi, as a airman, not or as a commissioned officer, as a permanent commissioned officer, or as a civilian. But once you join the defense services, but you will find yourself entirely different as a other persons. And I always motivate those who are interested to join. I liberally give advice and motivate them to join the Air Force and be proud of Indian Air Force veteran.
Really great. That was a really wonderful message for the audience. So you spoke like a true leader, and that's why they say when you have the right leadership, you are bound to be successful. We, the youth today, are united in solidarity to salute the protectors of our sky. Thank you, sir. It was an honor more than pleasure having you here. Thank you for sparing your valuable time from your busy schedule. We are really grateful for that. At the end, I would like to wish you once again a happy Indian Air Force Day. Jai Hind, sir.
Thank you very much. जाते जाते एक बताना है कि कॉलेज में भी मैं जो स्टूडेंट्स आते हैं, if they are having some affection towards defense, or some of the students not able to spend money for learning, they should join the defense, because in Air Force, you will be given the training of training as well as fooding, as well as shelter, as well as clothing. Everything will be given, and your services are required to the nation. And once you are professional in learning the things and giving dedication towards the services, and that will be a great gratefulness of that person to the nation. And I always motivate the person to join, and I always advise them to proceed for joining the defense services. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So it was an honor having you here. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you once again.
Wow, wasn't that amazing? We salute our brave air warriors for selflessly serving the nation, and we are proud of the glorious history of our valorous Air Force. I, Unnati Singh, on behalf of the Rotary Club of Sydenham College, would like to extend my sincere thanks to our chief guest, former Air Vice Marshal Mr. Kapil Kak, ex-Sergeant Mr. Subhas V. Shetty, and Wing Commander Mrs. Ritu Nayak for making today's event a resounding success. Your thoughts have enlightened our minds and have shown us a new path. My gratitude to all our speakers for gracing the occasion and sharing their opinions today. We will be forever grateful to you for your willingness to share your experience and expertise. You surely clear the mysterious aura that surrounds the Indian Air Force and inspired many along the way. Thank you to our principal ma'am, Dr. Madhuri Kagalkar, for supporting us throughout the way, and our professor in charge, Rajendra Mali sir, who has guided us through thick and thin. Last but not the least, a big thank you to the team at Rotary Club of Sydenham College for all their efforts, and our beloved audience for all your enthusiasm and support. Thank you. Signing off. Jai Hind.